Hello, Abdullah, can you hear me?
Yeah, Rimsha, I'm able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. So, thank you everyone for joining us. We have Abdullah for today as a speaker who will talk about triggers and trigger frameworks. This is a session 5 of Salesforce development training that will be uploaded on our YouTube channel as well. So, I think we are good to start.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Yeah. So today the topic on which I'll present is triggers and trigger framework. Well, let me first introduce myself. My name is Abdullah Mashood. I am working as a technical architect and dev lead in Speridian Salesforce department. I am leading a team of developers around 30 to 35, and they are located in different locations in Pakistan, Lahore, Karachi, and Multan. So as you know, Rimsha, she is the host, and Hassan Mustafa. So, what's our today's agenda? Our agenda is what are triggers framework, what are different trigger events, how we can write triggers, what are the best practices, and introduction to different trigger frameworks. And then we will give a demo, and then we will have a very important Q&A session. So, uh, let's start. So, what are triggers? Triggers are basically whenever we uh, create a record in any of the object, any standard object on any custom object in Salesforce. Let's say if we talk about contact object, when we will create a record from the UI, these are the triggers will be those operations which will be executed when we create or update records either in the standard object or in the custom object. So, what is the definition of what are triggers? Triggers are Apex scripts that runs before or after database operation, that is DML, automatically enforce custom business logic, useful or complex validations, automation, and data consistency. So, whenever we create a record in either custom object or on any standard object, there are two types of trigger events which we use frequently. Frequently, these are the update trigger, different trigger before triggers and after triggers. So in the before triggers, these triggers will be mostly used to uh, implement different sort of validations, and those validations will be sent to the system before saving it. Let's say we want to apply different validation, and let's say if validation is not fulfilled, then we can throw an error in the before trigger, and the record can't be saved. The end user need to fulfill the requirement. Let's say our validation is that we have to provide date in a specific format. We have provided a validation in the before trigger. If that date is not in that format, the user can't able to create the record unless he has to provide the date in the format which is desirable for the system. So this is the before trigger, and the after trigger is the one. Let's say when the
So, Abdullah, I can hear you. Are you on mute?
Sorry, I was in mute.
Yeah, you were on the other slide and you were on mute, so we were not able to hear you.
Okay, so so I can start from the beginning.
Yes,
Sorry
for
for
this.
that.
Not this. We can hear, yeah, we were able to hear you for like two slides. But for the third one, where you mentioned about before and after triggers, we lost you.
Okay.
Yes, this one.
Okay, so
This one.
there's the slide. Okay. So the I was telling that there are two types of triggers which we mostly use. These are the before triggers and after triggers. In before trigger, what we do normally, these are used for validations. Let's say I've implemented a validation through code that whenever a date is entered in the system, it has to be of specific format. We will implement this validation in the before trigger, and whenever end user is going to create a record, he have to provide the date in that specific format, otherwise he can't able to save the record. So this is the normal application of before triggers. Now if you go to the after triggers, in after triggers we have, let's say there is a requirement that when a contact is created, we need to send the ID and the email address of newly created contact into the external system. So we can achieve this thing through after trigger. So this is a high level application of these two triggers. Now let's move forward. In this slide, it's mentioned that we have, as the name already suggests, we have before insert, before update, before delete, and before insert. From the name, it is clear that before the insertion, if we want to apply a different sort of validations, we will apply there. Same in the case of before delete. Let's say before updating a system, before updating any record, if you want to apply any validation, we can do in before update, and same goes for before delete. And after insert, after update, these are all the when the record is get saved, and then we will have to perform some sort of operations. These all in same way: insert, update, delete, and undelete. So the first thing is the triggers with business logic. So when we started working on Salesforce, let's say in 2011 and 2012, at that time, people, what they do, they use triggers. But in triggers, what they do, they write the whole code on the trigger. And as you see, this is the uh, initial how we can implement logic in triggers. Write their code, their business logic on the triggers. This is the way how it seems. Now, there are different. This thing has causes different sort of problems. So, what are these problems? The problem is that large triggers become hard to maintain. Let's say if we have a very complex organization. In my previous company, I have worked on a client project in which they have a logic. Their trigger code contains 3,000 line of codes in their trigger. So this the code was very messy and very difficult, very hard, and the learning curve is also very high. So what we did, we this is a project that came up to as a support project. So what I mentioned, all the issues. So what we created, we started searching how we can implement it in a better way, so we can't face those sort of problems. Then we come to know that we can write a use of trigger framework. And so what is this is the first thing after that, and the things will getting evolved. So what we implemented a trigger handler pattern. What this pattern told us, this pattern tell us that we have to create or move all the logic from the trigger into a class, and all the business logic will be contained in that class, and our trigger is totally clean, and it will not be that much messy. So it will help us in clean, reusable, and testable code. These are all the things which we get after doing that implement these things. Now there's a trigger handler pattern. So as you mentioned, what Salesforce suggests that we have to create a single trigger on uh, one object per trigger. Let's say why we are using this. The main question is this: that why we are not using different sort of classes, let's say 3 or 4 classes for one trigger. The main reason is that whenever a trigger runs, let's say if we have 2 to 3 classes per trigger, we don't have any control on the order of execution. Let's say if I have 3 classes on an object, on one trigger object, so I can't say that when which object will which custom class will be run on that trigger. So that is the main reason that Salesforce has recommended that we can use only one trigger and having one class. So this is the high level architecture of this thing. We have object, we create one, we can say utility class, whatever we can say, and then all the business logic will reside into that uh, class trigger handler or whatever we can say. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So let's say this is the code. This is the, let's say we have a trigger. Here you can see the trigger is quite simple. It only references to a handler class, right? The account trigger handler, and all the business logic is in account trigger handler. So this is the way we can write a clean code and uh, a code which is more manageable and such sort of things. Now, this is the details of the one trigger per object that I already told you. Salesforce does not guarantee the execution multiple triggers on same object or the same event. This can lead to unpredictable behavior and difficult debugging. The main is a very important concept is sort of a separation of concerns. Business logic is moved out of the trigger and into dedicated methods within the handler class. The main reason is that separation of concern, as you people know, it's a very uh, good. This we have to implement this thing in all other languages. Let's say someone have worked on Java, someone have worked on .NET. Separation of concern is one of the main pillar, and we have to write a code in such a way that our code will follow this principle, that is separation of concern. The other things are reusability and easier testing. Now, it is working very good. Let's say this is a trigger trend. It works very well. It's providing us the results, all the things which we have mentioned. Then we move, as you know, in software industry, things will keep evolving. So the next thing after implementing the trigger handler patterns, people continue to thinking that how we can make it more flexible and how we can improve, get more performance from different, applying different patterns to this problem. So the next thing that came up after these two is the interface based trigger framework. So what is the interface based trigger framework? The interface based trigger framework is that we will created a interface, and in that interface we can say a contract, and that contract has to be followed by each and every class which is implementing this interface. So we have let me show you the example first, so it will be more easier for you. Let's say we have this, here we have implemented a I trigger handler. So in this interface, we have provide just the definition of 4 to 5 methods, and whichever class which is implementing this interface is now has to provide the logic or able to use these methods of this interface. So what are the problems this interface based trigger framework resolves? These are the things that in here. Why we use an interface based. While the basic trigger handler pattern is excellent, an interface based framework offers additional benefits, especially in large, more complex Salesforce organizations. The core benefit, as I already told you, that it is a contract. Let's say whatever in an interface, we will tell all those methods which the classes needs to implement. If they can't, if they are trying to implement that interface but not able to provide logic for any of the functions, then the code will give an error. So this, by implementing this contract based thing or interface based thing, we can enforce consistency. So this is the way of implementing consistency. And the other thing is the polymorphism. We can achieve the polymorphism thing by these are the as you all people already know who has already worked on Java or .NET or any other programming language. So we can implement other patterns here as well. So what is our goal? Our goal is to get the clean code. What are the best practices for writing the code? We have all the design patterns or all the concepts of object oriented programming, and their goals are already all the people know. So these are the two type of trigger based framework which we have used, and it's not just limited to these two things. One can come up on his own idea, on his he can implement his own design pattern. Let's say we can apply a singleton pattern, we can apply as per our needs, we can apply whatever pattern which suits our needs, or we just have to have in our mind that what are we are doing to do and what is the best way and how we can achieve this thing as per the best practices defined in the market, and people are already using those. So these design patterns, all these, we are not just limited to these, we can come up with our own patterns as well, or our own frameworks and as well, and people are already doing this. So this is the at high level what are the benefits of using a framework, why we started using framework, why we are not doing following the same uh, logic with which we have started from the start to write the code directly in the trigger. These are the consistent way, order of a predictable order of execution, recursive trigger, code maintainability is easy. We can use the, let's say if we wrote a utility class, we can use the same method in different places as well. It's not just limited to use that in trigger. So code reusability. So these are all the benefits which we get by using a framework. So now this is a very in my opinion, in my experience, what I understood is that a person who is working on Salesforce, especially a developer, it's not just limited to a developer. A functional guy also has to have the knowledge of order of execution. What is order of execution? Why it is used? Let me go back. I've already told you that there is a slide in which we have all the steps, the order of execution. So just review it. Yeah, this is the high level steps of order of execution. Old values are of system validation rules, apex before triggers, custom validation rules, record save. These are all the, just give a bird eye view, and we can, because this is the core of our development. Whatever development which we do in Salesforce, if someone don't have knowledge of the importance of order of execution, it is, in my opinion, it is the most basic thing to have this knowledge. So let's move forward. Yeah, so this is the triggers impact. So what we are willing to do here, we are willing to know the impacts of triggers on Salesforce order of execution. So these are the details of the some of the points which you mentioned here. So I think these are you can review these points on your own. These are just telling us about the summary of the steps which were mentioned in the previous slide. So let's go directly onto the, okay. So this is the key impacts of triggers on the order of execution. So let's say we, as I already told you, and you able to know that there are two types of triggers. There are before versus after. Before triggers are modifier validating; they are efficient for directly monitoring context. And the after triggers are for action that require record ID. I've given the example as well. The most important thing is the recursion. Let's say we have to keep a close eye on this problem. This is a very complex problem, and let's say as a developer, you, or as a team lead, a project, you have started working on a project, right? Initially you haven't go in that much detail, and you wrote a rough code or the code which allow recursion. So let's say when the code over the period of time, let's say it's a project of 3 months. After 3 months, when this project go to the production, and we provide different sort of operations, different we load different sort of data and all sort of things, then you come up to know that you are start getting the problems which are related to recursion. So in my opinion, it is very important to have a close eye on this, that whether the design, the architecture of the project which I am suggesting, or what I am creating and giving it to my developers, will any recursion problem will come here or not. So triggers are one of the main sources of those recursion issues. Triggers. So let's review the details. What is the recursion issue? Triggers can cause recursion. What is the how it can cause the recursion? If an after trigger updates the same record that fired it, or a sorry, if a after trigger updates the same record that fired it, or a related record then updates the original record, it can reinitiate the entire order of execution. Many a time when we are writing a code, or our developers are writing a code, let's say we are in much hurry, the deadline is there, so we bypass very simple patterns, simple logics, or simple things which we need to consider. We will start writing queries in the after trigger or in the before trigger without giving a much thought. So as this line is saying, that how a recursion can occur if an after trigger updates. Let's say we are in an after trigger and we are updating the same record. Let's say we are in the contact record, and in the after trigger of contact record we are updating the same record. So how it will file that, we will when we are getting records from there, so we have to keep a close eye on this thing. And another scenario is this, or a related record. Related record means account and contact. Let's say we are in a contact contact trigger, after trigger, and we are writing some logic on its parent record, which is account. So when we create do some updates, then it can reinitiate the entire order of execution. It is a complete topic, recursion. If you people can say, we can suggest another discussion to work on the implication of triggers on order of execution and how it can impact our solution and our project. So these are the high level things. One problem is recursion, other is the order of multiple triggers. Let's say if you have multiple apex triggers on the same object for same event, that is two before insert. Salesforce does, yeah, it is the same thing which I already told you, that we can't predict the order of execution, that when the which method will get executed. So we need to keep a close eye on this thing as well. So let's say another thing now, from couple of years, what we are starting looking into, see that different people, let's say there's a contact object. A company did a lot of work on their contacts, on the contact. Their business basically have huge automation on contact object. So there are scenarios when we see that their record trigger flows are written on the contact, and the code apex trigger is already written on the same contact. So we will have to keep a close eye on that thing as well. And that, let's say, how the flow are impacting different workflows and other processes. So let's say if we are updating a field in a workflow, what the impact will it have on the other things as well? So these are the things which will keep in our mind when we are doing development, or especially when we are designing our solutions. And another thing, let's say if we are working on a support project, the project that is came up to our company, and we are working on some another person had worked, and or another person, another company has worked on that. They have implement their design is not up to the mark. So at that time we will have to keep a very close eye on how the things will work. We have to make different changes, we have to suggest the best practices. So these are the things which will hurt us, and which will impact the, what we can say, performance of the team. So these are the things. And lastly, the governor limits, that each step in the order of execution contributes to the overall transactions governor limits. So, as it explains itself, that in order of execution, each and every step, let's say any query or any DML operation, is adding up to the governor limits. And as you know, we are using Salesforce, and it's a tenant based application. So there are limits for each and everything. So we also need to keep a close eye on the governor limits, that how we can limit those governor limits and how we can avoid the issues that will come up in resultant of those governor limits. So at last, these are the things, the best practices for triggers in context of order execution. The one thing is the one trigger per object. It is straightforward bulkifiable code. It is the most basic thing, that we have to write code which is bulkified, which can work on number of data. Another thing is that avoid DML or SQL in loops. So this is a fundamental Apex best practice, that we have to, in order to avoid the governor limits, we need to check our code, that whether we are using SQL or DML in loops or not. If we are using, we need to change the code. So in order to avoid this thing, the other thing is the recursion prevention. We can use, let's say, if there is an issue of recursion, there are different strategies. We can use Boolean variables to prevent the recursive calls. This is one of the solution. There are many solutions on the basis of the problem statement which we have. And at last, the most important thing, that we need to master, that how we can use a trigger.new, trigger.old. These things, these are very important context aware variables, and they can make our life very easy if we know how we can use these things, these context variables smartly. So another thing, that let's say if you are working on a project that is uh, in which highly large amount of data we need to import on daily basis, on weekly or monthly, whatever it is. Let's say if 1 million records are, I worked on in one of the company in which our client has uh, 5 5 crore contacts. They have 5 crore contacts in their system. they are they have a very huge data. So, and their data, every month they are updating and inserting data in their system. So we have and as that was a support project, there's different sort of issues. Whenever we are importing data, we start getting the locking issue, the issues related to locks. We Whenever we try to implement new thing, let's say we try to implement the parallelism while importing the data, we start getting the locking issues. So these are the things that we need to revisit our code. We have revisited our code, we have changed the logic, so to avoid those lock sort of issues. So there are many things. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on the best practices and how the code is written. And triggers and order of execution is very important. Triggers, in let's say if I'm working in the field from last 4 to 5 years, it seems like triggers are very simple thing, but in my opinion, triggers are one of the most complex things, and which we will have to design our system in a way that we will follow the best practices. And the more important thing is, we need to know that what we are designing, and what are the uh, problems we, if we will not able to write the clean code, write best code as per the best practices, what are the things which we can uh, suffer in the future. So this is the whole presentation. So this is the same. This is the trailhead modules. So this is all. Hello.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. It was an amazing session related to triggers and trigger frameworks, because and the best practices you talked about, especially the recursion, order of execution, these all, like, we should have good understanding before writing triggers or apex of all these. So thank you so much for sharing all this with us. This has been recorded. and I will upload this recording on the YouTube channel, and I will share on community as well. So we can go through this, and if you have any questions, we can go back to you on LinkedIn or WhatsApp because I can see any questions in the Q&A section or chat for now. So I think we are good to wrap this up. Um, Alrighty,
Okay. Thank you very much.
awesome, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining. Bye everyone.
Okay, thanks. Bye.